Good evening, everyone. This is the next tutorial of the unit number 3 that we are going to be starting. So let me shift over really quick and let me explain what we got going on here. All right, so this is a typo. It actually should say unit 3 in here. So I have it mixed up in both. But unit 3 is going to be the next unit that we are working with. Again, giving us an overview of what we're going to be talking about. The unit covers topics of animation, simulation, and modeling, and we'll spend some time going into each component. This unit will be more coding intensive versus learning concepts, or bookwork, if you want to call it. So we'll be doing over the next 2 weeks more coding than what we normally did in the past 2 units. Some key terms, obviously, that will pop up and about as we talk and discuss the subunits, which I believe there are 7 of them for unit number 3. So again, just familiarize yourself with what these terminologies mean. All right, so what we are going to do is we're going to create our first application. This application is called Turn the Lights Off app, and again, it's just a little whack-a-mole. If you ever played that game back in the arcades back in the day where you have to smack the mole on top of the head with a mallet, well, it's very similar to this, where you have to touch the light bulb, which is randomly popping up around your screen. All right, so the user interface is very simplistic. When you copy the link that is provided to you into this presentation here, it will take you, it will open up your App Inventor and will also import the needed media directly into your program. All right, so like I said, the user interface is very simplistic. We got the picture in the background, which is going to be our canvas. We have our image sprite over here, which is going to be an image overlaid on top of that. Very similar to when we did the Pong game and how we used canvases and image sprites to overlay pictures on top of that component. And then on the bottom here, we just have a label letting the user know to, hey, help save electricity, which is obviously the purpose of this app, is to create a more conscious-minded individual with promoting sustainability for energy. All right, so let me shift over to App Inventor. All right, and let's start putting this together. All right, so as I mentioned, our user interface is going to be simplistic. There are going to be new components that we will introduce within this application, and we'll get to that when we get there. Just so you know, one thing that I noticed when I imported all the media from copying that link, the original light bulb picture, which is lightbulb.jpg, when you overlay that onto an image sprite, I was finding that it was actually monstrous in size. So what I had to do is I had to take that picture and then I had to open it up in a native program on your computer, whether if it is like a Microsoft Paint program or if you have access to Photoshop, which I think as a student you have access to those Adobe products. But whatever it is, you just open it up, again, whether if you're on, PC or Apple or whatever, just open up the lightbulb.jpg, and then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to shrink it or reduce it down in size. And you can kind of, go back and forth and, tinker with the size that you want, whether if you want a really big light bulb or a very small light bulb. But I find that probably somewhere in the lines of like, 40 or 50 pixels square will do the trick for you. If you don't like it, if it's too big or too small for you, just adjust it from there. But once you have the right size of the image that you need, upload it. I have it right here in this random letter number sequence that my iPhone or my iPad generated. So that is the updated light bulb JPEG that you'll see when I put onto the screen. All right, so like I said, when we're going to design our user interface, we're going to have majority of the screen, which is going to be the backdrop of where the light bulb is going to randomly bouncing around. All right, so the majority of the screen is going to basically be my canvas. And then down below, I'm going to have a label component, and that label component is going to let the user know, help, do your job and conserve electricity by turning off the lights. So what I'm going to do for this is I am going to go under my layout, and I'm going to grab a vertical arrangement, and then I'm going to drop the vertical arrangement in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stretch out the vertical arrangement so it covers my entire screen. So we're going to go under our height and our width, and we're going to select on fill parent. All right. So because we have a vertical arrangement, everything that I drop in here now will basically scale everything vertically from top to bottom. Also, what I'm going to do is, because I want to have everything center justified, I'm just going to go over here to align horizontal, and rather having it aligned to the left, I'm going to have it aligned to the center. So everything that I drop in there will center justify everything. Okay, so like I said, we're going to have majority of the screen, which is going to be my canvas. So again, for that, you're going to go over drawing and animation, and we're going to click on canvas, and we're going to drop the canvas on the screen. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take our canvas and we're going to scale it down, height and width, how we want to. But before we do that, what I'm going to do, just because it's easier for me to kind of see where the components are, I'm going to go over user interface, and I'm going to drop a label directly below this canvas, and then I'm going to scale both of them in size. So I'm going to grab a label from the user interface, and then I'm going to drag and I'm going to drop that right below my canvas. All right, so now what I can do is I can go through and I could scale all the images appropriately. And since I'm already on label, I might as well just start with this one. So rather than saying label 1, you can give it any message, any title that you want. So for me, I'll just put label message, and we'll kind of leave it at that. And then canvas, being that this is the only canvas that I'm going to have, you're going to have to make enhancements, which is the reason why I'm changing the label message, is because there'll be more labels that you really need to add in here. But because I will only need one canvas, I'm just going to leave and not change that. Again, as you're learning coding, you should get in the good habit of just renaming everything just to be on the safe side. But with that being said, if you leave it as canvas 1, that is fine. We're going to, again, with label message selected, I'm now going to come here to the right side, and I want to change the height and the width. So the width I want to have is fill parent, because I want it to scale the entire screen from left to right. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to do a text alignment of center. And then last, what I'm going to do is for height, I don't want to do a fill parent on height, because then that's going to give me half the screen size for my label and then half the screen size for my canvas. I want it just a little bit higher than this. So what I'm going to do, rather than have it automatic, I'm going to select on pixels. And let's just say, I don't know, maybe we'll do 20. We'll see how that works. All right, so we have our label increase in size just a little bit. And then maybe what I'll do is, instead of font size of 14, let me make it a little bit bigger. Let me try putting 18 in here. There we go. All right, that looks good. So we can have our 18 font size fit within our 20 pixel height of our label. So when we add a message here, it should span from left to right. We just got to be careful with this, though, because if we type too much in here, the text will wrap, and then what will happen is that majority of this I'll show you right here. I need to add more. All right, so as you can see here, text wraps to the bottom below, but the problem is, because we scaled our label to only 20 pixels, this last red-green is going to be cut off the screen. So we want to make sure that if we are going to have more text, if you want to write a more detailed message, what you're then going to have to do is you're going to have to increase that 20 pixel size to something greater. But I know that I'm going to, that's not going to happen for me. So I'm going to write my message right now. To your part and conserve electricity. All right, so there's my message that I want to portray. Again, it's scaled or center justified, so it looks nice and neat, and it doesn't wrap outside of that the confines of the label field that I have. So that thing should be good for now. So let me move on now. Let me go to Canvas, and let me now change the height and the width. So I'm going to choose a fill parent for both height and width. And there we go. All right, so we'll have this nice big area here where we'll have our little, turn off the lights game that we have. And then we have, obviously, our message on the bottom. All right, because this we have animation going on here, what we're going to do is we are also going to now add an image sprite, and then that image sprite is going to be the light bulb that we have. So again, I'm going to go back down here to drawing an animation. I'm going to grab an image sprite, and I'm going to drop it on my screen. All right, and with it being highlighted, being that I only have one image sprite, I don't need to change the name of this. But if you want to, what we can do is rather than call it image sprite, we can call it light bulb. All right, so that it's very specific to the item that's going to be bouncing around the screen. So we renamed it. We're going to come down here now, and we're going to assign the image to the image sprite. So on the right-hand side here, we have a picture, all right, with the image sprite highlighted. So if I click on that, I'm going to select the light bulb. Again, remember, you have to adjust the one that comes with this. So I have my adjusted picture here, and I hit OK, and there's my light bulb. All right, so that's going to be the item that's going to be bouncing around the screen. All right, so what I also want to have happen is whenever I touch the light bulb, I want to have the beep sound go off. All right, so I got my beep sound here. So what I need to do for that is, again, whenever we have to have a sound generated, we need to use our sound component or player component. A player component, think of it this way, a player component like we used back in the first program with the I Had a Dream app is something if you're playing a long, extensive an MP3 video audio clip, and then the sound feature is only when you're looking to play either short like WAV files or you can play MP3s obviously through a sound player, but or the sound component, I should say. But this is usually used for very, very small either MP3 clips or other type of WAV or AVI, audio components. So I'm going to just click on the sound, and I'm going to drag and I'm going to drop it on my screen. As you can see, it shows up down here as my invisible component. And then over here for sound 1, what I'm going to do is the source. I'm going to click on source, and then I want to make sure that I select my beep.mp3 and hit OK. All right, so now whenever I touch the light bulb, I'm going to code it this way, but whenever I touch the light bulb, I'm going to play that sound. So I know that I'm touching a light bulb. And then there's one other component that I need to add in here, and it should be under your sensors palette. And we're going to grab this clock feature right here. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to drag and drop it on my screen. So we see down here that we have our clock component. And as you can see over here, when clock 1 is highlighted, again, I won't change the name of it because that's the only one I'm going to have. Clock is set by default to always fires, meaning that it's always going to fire. It's set to enabled, which means that the moment you load your program, it starts. And then we have the interval over here, which is 1,000. So again, whenever you see a time or anything set up in App Inventor, the interval is always set to milliseconds. So we have 1,000 milliseconds, which is equal to 1 second. So what this means is that the clock is always going to fire off, meaning that every 1 second that when you call the clock function, like if I snap my fingers at a 1 second interval, all right, every time I snap, that the interval is basically firing off an event, all right? So that is a great way for us to use this clock feature in order to have, think of it as almost like a loop. When you have a loop working, the loop is going to continue looping over and over again until it, tests out of that condition. Well, the clock function kind of is similar in that regard, all right? The clock function is always going to fire. And always, the event is always going to kick off until you tell it basically not to. All right, so we have our light bulb on our canvas. We have our label. We have the clock and the sound feature in here. One thing we got to do is we got to add the backdrop also to our canvas. So let me go back under my canvas here, and let me go to background image. And now I'm going to select this kitchen island.jpg. And then hit OK. All right, so we now have the backdrop of our kitchen. We have our light bulb. We're going to make this light bulb bounce randomly around my canvas here. And then we got our message on the bottom here about doing your part and conserve electricity. All right, so as far as the interface is concerned, it is very basic, but I mean, that's all that we basically need for now. This will change when it comes to your enhancements, and we'll cover that toward the end of the video. All right, so let's shoot over to our blocks area and let's do some coding over here. So the first thing that we're going to do to get this moving is that the moment I load my program, because as you can see right now, we don't have any start buttons or reset buttons or anything listed within our application here. So the moment I load my program, I want this light bulb to start moving. All right, so whenever we load a program and we need an event to fire off, all right, what I'm going to do is I need to go under my screen, which is located here, screen 1. And then there's a event handler, which is third from the top, which is called screen1.initialize. And again, remember, when I use the word event handler truly means whenever an event needs to take place. All right, so these yellow blocks are handlers, meaning that they handle or they sort of drive the event to fire off or to start going, or call it what you will. But I mean, that's the whole purpose behind these. So this is going to initialize, meaning once we start this program, I need to do the code that is inside this event handler. So what I'm going to do for this, though, is I'm just going to, because again, we always want to create what we call procedures, because in computer science we want to, again, use the word, it's called refactoring. We always want to refactor our code, which means we want to achieve that level of abstraction, make things more and more and more abstract, because the more abstract they are, the less detailed they become. And we do that by adding procedures into our code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my procedure tab here. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to pull out this procedure block. All right, and so what do I want to have happen? Well, once I initialize my screen, I want to start the light bulb to move. All right, so rather than just creating code in here to allow the light bulb to move, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a procedure, and then in that procedure, I'm going to then call the procedure here under my screen initialize. So I'm going to put the move function here inside my procedure. So what I'm going to do is rather than call this procedure, I'm going to change the name of this, and we'll call it move random. All right, and so in there, well, what do I want? Well, I want my light bulb to move randomly around the screen. So if I go into my light bulb here, and if I scroll down into the built-in procedures we have here, okay, we see that there is a function here that's called move to. All right, and then we have two inputs here, X and we have Y. So let me pull this out, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to plug this into my procedure here. So again, the move to function, what this is going to allow me to do is every time that an event fires off, it's going to tell the light bulb to move to this X position and to this Y position, or X coordinate and Y coordinate. So if you remember when we talked about Pong and we talked about the Paint app, whenever we have a canvas here, okay, we always said that the top left-hand corner up top here is my 0, 0. All right, that's my coordinate system. So that's my origin. And every time I move to the right in this direction, we're going from 0 all the way up to positive infinity, however long the screen is, or wide the screen is. And then when we move downward, remember, we're not going negative, we're going positive. All right, it's usually negative in math, but in App Inventor it's positive. So we start at 0 in the top left-hand corner, and then we increase plus 100, plus 200, plus 300, 400, etc. as we go downward. So when I have this light bulb move, we take the center position of my light bulb here, and if I want to move to the 0, 0 position, well, then this light bulb is going to sort of get pegged all the way up top here in the left-hand corner. If I move to the 100, 100 position, well, I'm going to go over 100, I'm going to go down 100, and then the light bulb should be somewhere up in this area up here. If I wanted to move to the 200, 200, well, then I would move over 200, I'd move down 200, and then the light bulb would probably be somewhere in the middle of the screen, down over here, and so on and so forth. All right, so by using that move to feature, we're going to allow us to have that block move to a certain X and Y coordinate system. But again, I don't want it to move to a specific X and Y coordinate. I want it to randomly move within my X and Y coordinate system. So again, if you remember, we use this in our Pong game. If we go into our Math tab here and we scroll up, all right, we have a random integer block right here. So I'm going to click on this, drag this out, and I'm going to hook this up into my X. And then what I'm going to do, because I also want the same for the Y, I'm just going to control-click and duplicate this block, and I'm going to plug it into my Y component. All right, so, well, where do we want the block, the light bulb to move? Well, I want it to move somewhere between the very top left-hand corner. So if you really wanted to, what we can do is we can switch this to 0, 0. All right, because that would be the center of the image. Just keep in mind, though, if you do that, the center of the image will be stuck in the left-hand corner. Half your image is going to get cut off. Or, half your image will be cut off. But with that being said, actually, no, more 3/4 of your image will be cut off. So if you don't want to have that, then you can kind of leave it at the 1, 1, or you can even go out a little further, 5, 5, up top here and down here. But I'm going to leave it at 0, 0 for now. So what about the end stop that we have over here? Well, again, you can put a hard value in here, a constant, as we call these, at 200 or 300 or 400. But just keep in mind, though, that depending on the screen size that you are using, ultimately is going to determine where this maximum value should be. So if you are using a small, an older iPhone or an older Android, and the screen pixel resolution is only 300 by 300, well, then 300 will be the maximum number you can have here. If you're using an iPad Pro, that this number might be all the way up into like the 1400s or 1500s. So depending on the device that you're using, all right, that should dictate what this final number is, not plugging in a constant number like you see here. All right, so what do we do for that? Well, if we go under our canvas, all right, and we scroll all the way toward the bottom, okay, we have our get width and we have our get height features. Well, what these will allow us to do, if we actually use these here, these will dynamically grab the size of the screen, because whenever we load our program, all right, these canvas width values are stored, I guess you could say that, are stored within the code itself. And so by using these lines of code, we can grab those parameters as far as how wide and how high the screen is. So again, by using these, it'll allow us to dynamically grab that number so we don't have to fix the number like we see in the code over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this canvas1.width, all right, and my width is my X component, so I'm going to plug that in here, and I'll just take this and throw this away. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Actually, what I can do is I can just right-click, control-click on that, duplicate, plug that in. And then rather than obviously having them both as width, well, the Y component needs to be height. So I'm just going to click on this drop-down here, and I'm going to scroll down to height and select that. All right, so this will now give us a random integers between 0 and whatever the width and the height of my screen is, all right, and then return those values. And then so if it randomly gives me 300 and randomly gives me 50 for the Y, right, it's going to be 300 comma 50. It's going to move that light bulb to that specific position. So now what I'm going to do under my procedures, I'm going to grab this call move random. And now I'm going to plug this into here. Because again, what this does, this is calling my procedure block, which I created, right, which is now showing up down here in my procedure palette. All right, and so now by calling this, it's pointing to this, and then it's now allowing this code to execute. All right, so when I start my screen, and you can test this now if you want, but when I start my screen, the light bulb should randomly be moving across. All right, so the next thing I need to do is, when I touch the light bulb, all right, I need to, again, play that component, that sound that I added in there. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to click on this light bulb here, because that's my sprite, all right, and we have all these different event handlers here, but again, when lightbulb.touched, that's the one that I need, so I'm going to drag that out and plug that in. And so what did I say I want to have happen? Well, when I touch the light bulb, I want to play that sound. So again, if I go under sound, which is where the sound should be located, I want to click on the play sound one. So now with this added in here, whenever that light bulb, even when it's stopped, when that light bulb is moving around the screen, when I touch the light bulb, it should play the sound that I have registered to it. I also, what I'm going to do under the sound component, there's this vibrate feature as well. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to plug this in as well. So rather, if say maybe a user of yours is hard of hearing, or maybe they possibly could be hearing impaired, all right, this will allow them to feel that they've actually touched the item in question. And then I need to have an input over here, and the input is in milliseconds, and that just determines how long should the phone vibrate for. So I'm going to plug in an integer block here, and I'm going to type in the number 500. And 500 stands for 500 milliseconds, so it's a half a second. So the phone should vibrate also for half a second. All right, and then the last thing I need to do now is, well, as of right now, the screen, once it initializes, will randomly move this to another place. But that's it. Nothing else is going to happen. So how do we get it to move constantly? Well, this is where this clock timer comes into play. So when I click on clock, there is an event handler here that's called whenClock1.timer. So I'm going to click on this and bring this out. And so what do I want to have happen? Well, if you remember on the beginning page, all right, the timer or the clock component is set to an interval of 1,000 milliseconds or 1 second. So that means any code that is within here is going to call this timer function. And that means that the code is going to constantly execute over and over again every 1 second until you add additional code in here to actually make that stop. Otherwise, the program will run continuously. So every 1 second, the event will fire off. Well, what do I want to have happen? Well, every 1 second, I want that picture of that light bulb to randomly move around the screen. Well, we already used, we already created code in our procedure called move random, right? And remember, this code is what allows that light bulb to randomly move around the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under procedures here, and I'm just going to grab this call move random, and I'm going to plug this into my clock timer. So now with this code hooked up, what you'll see is that every 1 second, the clock is going to fire off, and it's going to call this function move random. We go into our procedure here, all right? I called it a function. That's just the C terminology. It's in here, it's procedures. So we created this procedure. It calls this procedure. It points to, again, our procedure, and in here is our code that is calling the light bulb to move to a random position in the X and Y direction. All right, and then it returns that value and then moves the object, all right, waits a second, bang, fires off again, calls this procedure again, grabs a new position, okay, returns that value, light bulb moves, waits a second, boom, fires off again, and then on it goes, all right? And then as the light bulb is bouncing around, okay, we then have our function over here. That is, when we touch the light bulb, we're going to play the sound, the beep, and then as well as the vibration of your device. Some devices that you might be using might not have a vibration built in. Usually if you're using a phone, you'll be fine. But if you're using a tablet, a lot of tablets don't have the vibration feature built in, just so you know. All right, so this is basically all the code you need. All right, this will get the app up and running and working to the perspective that you need it to. Let me check how am I doing on time here? All right, I got to wrap this up. I got a minute and a half. So really quickly on the last page, this is going to be posted online. All right, these are the enhancements that I want you to make. This is what the UI should look like after the fact. Adding labels down here for score, adding a start button, reset button. The most important thing is that now what I want you to do, rather than to have this randomly start moving around the screen upon start, I want you so that the light bulb does not move. All right, so that timer enabled feature, you're going to have to disable it somehow. Hint, hint. All right, and then once you click the start button, that's when you're going to enable the timer and have it move around. And when you click the reset button, you want to disable the timer so that the light bulb stops moving, and you're also going to reset the score. There's other enhancements in here that you need to add as well. All right, so make note of that. This is going to be your next assignment. I will post today on Blackboard, and it will be due next week on Wednesday. All right, so let me cap it there, folks. This slideshow also will be on Blackboard as well, which will help you with everything also. All right, that being said, have a great day. We will catch you next time. Take care.